I'm putting $10,000 on Shavkat.
If you're scared of Pereira that much that you don't even want to fight in the division anymore, is that the samurai way?
Is Merab one of the biggest idiots in the UFC?
I don't believe in the black magic, but that science pointing to that is a true fact.
You absolutely suck!
Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We're the Kairouz Brothers giving you the news that's happening in combat sports this week. Nick, it's been a quiet week as we're adjusting, going to the Sphere. All eyes are on the Sphere. It's boxing up against the Sphere, Canelo Alvarez versus Sphere. That's pretty much the talk.
Yeah, there's been not much else. I think coming off that Perth card, anytime there's really a Vegas fight night in the Apex, there's always kind of a bit of a drop-off. We saw the Paulo Costa lookalike get a good win over Jared Cannonier.
Hey, the fight nerds.
Hey,
the fighting nerds.
He knocked the shit out of him. Late round finish in round 5. But other than that, there wasn't really much to talk about. I think he's started calling out people. He said he wants one more fight than a championship fight. I think he's getting a bit ahead of himself. But other than that, everyone is looking forward to the Sphere. I mean, Sean O'Malley, Merab's done some stupid things. I think a lot of stuff that he's done in the past has come up. We'll get into it later, but I'm worried that fight's not going to happen.
Hey, you brought up the fighting nerds. I've been seeing some crazy edits on TikTok of these fighting nerds. They chuck the glasses on, they celebrate their wins. They could be taking over the UFC very soon. You never know. But yeah, let's get straight into it. I want to go into our MMA hot take this week. MMA hot take this week comes from Robert Whiitikar. He thinks that Alex Pereira shouldn't go back down to middleweight because he would lose against Dricus du Plessis.
Well, on Submission Radio, he said, I would advise Pereira not to go down because Dricus likes to get hit and Pereira doesn't like to get hit, and Dricus has a pretty good range. Mm-hmm. I severely disagree here with Robert Whiitikar. If Alex Pereira wants to go down, he's already a champion in that division. He's shown he can beat Adesanya very, very comfortably, and other people in that division. Sean Strickland he knocked out. So if I'm Alex Pereira, he's already put out on his Twitter he wants another title in that division. I think he's more likely to go there than to heavyweight. I think that makes more sense for him.
Well, you can't say DDP hasn't gone up against good strikers. He's gone up against Sean Strickland, who caused a lot of trouble for Adesanya. Adesanya, in his own right, is one of the best strikers in the division. And he looked fairly good. It's not like you were watching a washed Adesanya. So DDP can go up against good strikers. But to say that it's not a good matchup for Alex Pereira, you're talking about the best striker in the UFC.
Well, that's what
you're talking about a guy that's got 5 stars on UFC 5.
It's contradictory because he said Dricus likes to get hit. And if Alex Pereira does hit you, you're fucked. You're getting knocked out. That left hook will kill anyone in the UFC. So, it just doesn't make any sense for him.
Maybe he's talking about the unpredictable nature of DDP, but I think Alex Pereira is one of the toughest matchups in any division, and I think he would probably go back down and win the champ.
You know what I think it is? Robert shitting himself. If he's seeing a future title shot for himself, he doesn't want to verse Alex Pereira. He'd much rather verse DDP. Why the hell would you want to verse Alex Pereira? I understand you're scared, Robert, but maybe just don't make it public.
Bobby Knuckles isn't scared of anyone. He's going up against Khamzat Chimaev fairly soon. But you're right. I think him saying, look, I wouldn't waste your time coming back down. Maybe Robert doesn't want to see Alex Pereira in the middleweight division. That's just another challenger that he has to get through possibly. You never know. But look, you're talking about a guy that is a former middleweight champ, beat Israel Adesanya, beat guys like Strickland. I think it's a comfortable cut for Alex Pereira to go back down and face DDP.
As long as he's comfortable dropping the weight again, because I think that's always the struggle for fighters. He said he's been up at 185 for a while now. For him to go back down, then cut back to that weight, that's what would be a struggle. It's not like it's had one fight up there. It's the 3-4 fights and coming back down to that weight.
It was almost like the meme that's been going around as Alex Pereira, only I can beat. only I can beat Adesanya. Adesanya, come to daddy. You can't, DDP, you can't beat him, so I'm going to have to come down and beat you.
It's like he's got to one-up Adesanya as well. Adesanya couldn't beat Dricus, so now he's got to go back down and finish the job.
Well, talking about Israel Adesanya, he hinted that he may have been injured going into the DDP fight. He went out on Twitter and said, These guys know me too well in my fighting style. He didn't throw any leg kicks. So hinting that he had a bit of an injury going into the match.
Alex Pereira put out on Twitter, he said after studying the fight, he thought Adesanya was injured because of his lack of leg kicks.
Yeah.
Adesanya then quote tweeted that with the quote saying that
it's weird how this guy knows me. It's like we've spent hours studying each other and have fought multiple times, which they have.
And that's, I think if Pereira obviously knows him that well, they obviously got a history outside of the UFC as well, then maybe Adesanya was injured because that's another, expert looking at it. But for me personally, if you're going to admit you were injured or coming in with an injury, I always see it as a cop-out excuse. If you weren't going to, say that you're injured going into the fight, then you're not injured after the fight. Anything that happens in the octagon on that day, you're 100%. And I feel like most athletes, professional athletes, obviously I'm not one, but most athletes that talk about this is the person that was in the octagon or on the field that day was 100%, and that's all that is.
I don't think it's a cop-out from Izzy. He may well have been carrying an injury, but how many times can we use this excuse for multiple fighters? I mean, you know, he said that last time about his Strickland.
All training camp, I was struggling, I was carrying this, I was carrying that.
When he called out DDP for not taking the fight earlier, he was saying, I fought Strickland injured. You take fights injured. So he doesn't really lean on it as an excuse, but he did say, I didn't throw leg kicks because I was having some trouble. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of a cop-out to say it after the fact, but at the end of the day, Izzy's not gone anywhere. I think he's going to come back and redeem himself. I think all of them are. I think Volk comes back and redeems himself. Izzy comes back and Usman comes back and redeems himself. And that's on the horizon pretty soon.
Well, hopefully they can all at least get a championship fight. But for Adesanya, you had a year off. I mean, what more time did you need to get ready for this fight if you're injured? And to be fair, most people said in the first 2 rounds, he looked great. He looked like he was, moving pretty well. He didn't have any injuries. Like, no one really thought he was carrying
Everyone was
anything.
talking about his physique, how much he's filled
Yeah, it
out.
looked
It's
like
the
he was
best
doing so
Adesanya
well.
we've ever seen. But speaking of those three, Volk, Adesanya, Usman, they're both, I think it is 1 and 3 in their last 4.
All 3 of them had a bit of a bad run in the UFC so far.
If you had to choose one that would not make a comeback, who would it be?
To not make the comeback? Out of like who I want to see not come back or who's not the
who do
ability?
you think at this point in time right now in their careers, who doesn't make a comeback?
I think Adesanya. Who's now lost to DDP and Strickland, who's got no real opponents to verse. Usman, next fight's probably going to be a title fight. Volkanovski, next fight, going to be a title fight.
Maybe not.
Adesanya, out of those 3, is the one that's probably in the worst position. And unless he can beat a contender, and in that division, it's Khamzat, Robert Whiitikar, which I don't think he can beat right now. I don't think he's in the condition to beat them because I just think he's fallen off, and that's what happens. Father Time catches up to everybody. Usman, yes, he's old and has got shot up knees apparently, but if he can beat Belal, he's straight up to the top of the mountain.
That's true. Like I said, I think Volk is coming off a title loss, so he's entitled to a rematch. He's in good spirits. He looks like he's ready to go. He's ready to come back. I wouldn't count him out at all.
Not at all.
I think he's got multiple fights ahead of him. Adesanya coming off 2 title losses, looking to get back into the line. I think it's a tough road back to the top. So I think you're right. I think it's Adesanya. Usman's coming off a fight where some people say if that fight went against a bit longer against Khamzat Chimaev, he probably wins.
And you got to think that was him going up in weight. That wasn't him in his own weight division. So
and then
you can
also
kind of excuse the loss
you're
as well.
also talking about 2 very close fights with Leon Edwards. So I don't think he's long gone at all. In fact, he's probably going to fight for a title fairly soon. So I think the pressure's on Adesanya the most out of those 3, the OG crew, to make the comeback.
And when you hear them talk, I think because Usman has a podcast, he probably does a lot more boasting than what the other 2 do. But Usman talks like he still has a lot left in the tank. Volkanovski, every time you talk to him, the comeback's going to be better than the setback. Adesanya sounds defeated. If you hear him post-fight against Drikas, look, I didn't manifest this. He's defeated as a fighter. And that's, I think, slowly as your mentality wanes, as your career goes on, that's probably the worst thing.
Well, let's talk about the welterweight title. Okay, right now it's currently held by Belal Muhammad. We all saw him upset everyone in Manchester. But who is he going to face next? That's probably everyone's point of discussion in that division. Who is going to be Belal's next opponent? Everyone is talking about it's either going to be Kamaru Usman or it's going to be Shavkat Rakhmonov.
Shavkat Rakhmonov probably deserves the title shot the most, but the problem for me is he hasn't fought since December last year and probably needed a bigger win than Wonderboy. And a bigger win than Wonderboy probably would have been Jack Della or Kamaru Usman. But because Kamaru Usman hasn't fought him, it kind of leaves everything in a lull.
Listen, Shavkat took to Twitter, went to bat for himself. He said, 18-0 and all finishes, I'm next in line. And it's really hard to argue with that resume. The guy's a freak.
Well,
the guy's what I'd say he's the scariest bloke in the UFC. Don't worry about Hamza. Don't worry about any other boogeyman. Shavkat is the scariest guy in his division and in the UFC right now. But he's not going to sell, especially against a guy against Belal. What would you rather see more? Usman versus Belal or Shavkat versus Belal? Every day of the week, it's looking at Usman trying to reclaim his gold.
I'll definitely take Kamaru Usman because I think it can sell better. And I don't think if they do fight in December, it won't be the main card because I don't think Belal can be the main card anymore. He'll be the co-main. And I think for that slot, you could put either of Shavkat or Usman. But considering the point in the career where Usman is at, I think he deserves the title shot. Give him, one more like legendary. This is like a thank you for your career. Shavkat, he's got a long career ahead of him and he hasn't been active as much as well. But I think so if Shavkat gets that one more fight, of course he deserves a title shot.
Shavkat, do everyone a favor. Get through Ian Gary. Okay, everyone wants to see it. Put him out of his misery, put his wife out of his misery, and then go for the title. Have that one more fight, whether it's JDM, Ian Gary, Michael Venom Page, whoever it is, and then earn the title. Let us see Usman versus Belal. But do you think Usman can beat Belal? Genuinely?
Yes, I think he'd be the favourite. I think it's
favourite?
It's a matchup nightmare for
After
Belal.
what he did to Leon Edwards?
Yeah, because Leon Edwards is more of a striker. Kamaru Usman is a more experienced wrestler.
When you look at
and if you look at the size advantage,
Nah.
yes, Leon Edwards had the size advantage, but he didn't use it that well. Kamaru Usman would actually use his size against Belal.
Okay, well, why didn't he use it against Leon Edwards? Why didn't he use it?
Because they're similar sizes.
Did you see how Belal Muhammad mauled Leon Edwards? I didn't see Usman do that. And Usman's claiming, oh, you use the same game plan as me. Well, you didn't win the fight.
Well, that's because Leon Edwards was a different fighter. I will say that. It was the 6 a.m. got to him. Waking up that early got to him. He was tired. He was not the same fighter.
Yeah, you could say it's a similar matchup with Usman versus Tyrone Woodley. Like, exactly, similar build, smaller guy. See how he would fare. But look, with the performance from Belal Muhammad, I think he's the best welterweight in the world right now. It was a one-sided affair all 5 rounds. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, no, he deserves
And Usman
respect.
coming off a very long period of time off, having maybe one fight a year. I'm telling you right now, I think it's favoured towards Belal.
Nah, you'd be wrong in that. And I would happily bet against you. I'd put all my money on Usman. I'd put a substantial wager on that. And I think just Usman, if people are forgetting how good of a fighter he was, how people, before he did lose to Leon Edwards, were saying he was the best welterweight of all time. So if that was the case, how can you say that, all of a sudden, he's lost 2 fights, let's not, call him that anymore. Belal is on a good run, and he had a great showing against Leon Edwards. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a unanimous decision victory. It's not like he finished him. He didn't finish him.
Well,
Kamaru Usman can finish Belal.
It's a Belal special.
That's what I'm saying. So
I'm saying, he didn't finish Leon Edwards, Nick, and Belal Muhammad got the better
I
of
think
it.
the only person in that division that Kamaru Usman can't beat is Shavkat. Because Shavkat is the boogeyman, like you said.
He's the young, hungry kid.
And if you had to
everyone.
verse him, he's a matchup nightmare. He's taller than you, he can wrestle better than you, and he can probably strike with you.
I don't know, with Shavkat, sorry to go back to him, you saw what he did to Underboy, choked him out. He did that 3 weeks prior, he was in a cast, on crutches.
His ankle was terrible.
The guy's a freak, mate. Like, very minimal training,
Well,
go
look,
and kill. I know Underboy's a 40-year-old karate instructor, but at the end of the day, he's still a skilled fighter in the octagon.
As soon as I heard Shavkat missed his sister's wedding to train, I was like, okay, that's it.
Yeah, anyway, whoever Shavkat is facing next, I'm saying it right now, I'm putting $10,000 on Shavkat. 10,000, whether it's JDM, I know I'm going against the Aussie, Ian Gary, Shavkat, just based on the stats alone, 18-0, all finishes, I'm putting my money on Shavkat. So I'd like to see him fight for the title. I just want to see him wait his time. Talking about someone that was in Australia last week, Jiri Prochazka was here for UFC 305. Everyone's asking the question, what's Jiri doing? He's on social media. He's doing side quests everywhere. Yeah, he's popping up everywhere. But where is next for Jiri Prochazka?
Well, everyone thought after the loss for Pereira, there wasn't really much for him to do in the light heavyweight division. So that meant, okay, can he go up or can he go down? I don't think he wants to go up because it's harder to go up to the heavyweight division. It's a lot more harder hitting people. So they said, okay, would you go down? And after the weekend, or after UFC Perth, he said, look, if Adesanya had won, I wasn't going down. But because DDP won, I'm going to go down. I'm entertaining the option of going down.
The clash with Adesanya is Tim Simpson's their manager. So he manages Adesanya and Jiri Prochazka, so it would definitely be a conflict of interest. You don't want to be taking bread from the same basket.
It's like why Belal doesn't versus Islam.
Exactly right. It's not like they're teammates, but there's obviously a bit of friendship there, bit of mutual interest. It's just business. But it does make sense for him to go down now and try and reignite, maybe get a few wins and chase that title in that division.
Well, he said that he won't obviously go straight for the title. He want to go down, have maybe 1 or 2 fights there and earn a title shot.
What's the best matchup for him right now?
For him to go down to middleweight, I feel like Jared Cannonier would have been a great opponent before the weekend, but now that's kind of, you'd be a waste if you versed him. I don't know. I think Izzy would make sense. I know they've got the same manager, but that's the fight that makes sense. It kind of, tests him out against one of the greats of the division. But I don't know. It's really hard. Maybe the loser of
Whiitikar comes out. I was just about to say it. I think that makes the most sense. They'd have a lot to gain from the fight. Whoever loses that wants to obviously still make their mark in the division. Jiri wants to make his mark by beating a Robert Whiitikar or beating a Khamzat Chimaev. That would make sense. Get his name on the map there. And then, have a title eliminator possibly. I don't know, but it does make a lot of sense seeing him at middleweight.
But does that mean he's scared of the light heavyweight division? I know he beat Rakic at UFC 300, but if you're scared of Pereira that much that you don't even want to fight in the division anymore, is that the samurai way?
I don't think it's a samurai way to run away from a tougher opponent. You saw him. I mean, I think what Yuri's weakness is magic.
The black
It's
magic.
Sharmunian magic, black magic, and he can't. He's got to escape that and go to a division where there's none of that.
I saw some TikTok on Adesanya talking about the Shaman magic, and he said the one fight that he's lost in the UFC, which was to Adesanya, was the one where he rocked up to the weigh-in with no face paint.
Yeah, but doesn't Adesanya carry a broom around with him to
But I'm
get
saying,
rid
like,
of all the spells?
It's like it is a coincidence that the one fight he lost was the fight where he didn't have the face paint on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in the black magic, but that signs pointing to that is a true
Well,
fact.
listen, I want to see the Samurai get back on top. He's one of the most entertaining fighters in his division.
He's scary as well.
Mate, he's got a very awkward, very unique fight style. Imagine a matchup like him versus Sean Strickland or him versus Paulo Costa. That'd be very good. I want to see it happen. You know, I think that's the way to go for him. I want to see it.
Listen, Paulo Costa's been like talked about to fight Jared Cannonier. So if you're in that category now, you're like, 9, 10
He
in the
needs to
rankings,
win.
you're
He
struggling.
needs to win.
You're struggling. I feel sorry for Paulo Costa, but I think Paulo Costa needs to fight a bigger person than that.
I know we've been talking about this every week, but Arman Tsarukyan, okay, he's come out in a recent interview, I think it was in Russian, I was reading the translations, that if Islam is not able to fight in December, that he wants to fight for an interim belt. But, I mean, who's going to be the opponent?
Well, he said that the UFC is talking to him. They said December's the likely date for the fight. If Islam's not ready, it's going to be an interim
Because
fight.
Islam is coming off a wrist injury.
Which is a shame because everyone wants to see Islam versus Arman too.
I would have loved to see it in Abu Dhabi.
But going through the top 5 rankings of that division, Justin Gaethje got knocked out at UFC 300. Dustin Poirier just lost a title fight. Charles Oliveira just lost to Arman Tsarukyan. And then number 5 is Dan Hooker, who just came off a fight against Gamrot, which, okay, you won that fight, but you really entitled contention.
He's even said, I want a title eliminator. He's not really ready for an interim fight or a title fight, but he
really
wants a
there's
title
no one
eliminator.
And then the only other person that makes sense is Max Holloway, but he's in a title fight in another division. So it's like, who does Arman fight?
It's a weird one. I think it's probably if Max Holloway can back up, but the thing is, I don't think he'll be able to back up because you're probably going to go to war with Ilia Topuria.
That's going to be a 5-round probably death match.
And with all this being said, what's going to happen with the BMF belt? Does anyone give a shit about the BMF belt? Like, Ilia Topuria took a photo with both belts. He must have bought a replica online or maybe from Temu. But it's just kind of lost in the shuffle here because Max Holloway holds it. He's fighting for the featherweight title. If Max Holloway loses and maybe has the opportunity to fight for another title, where's the BMF going to be?
Who
is he going to
BMF?
vacate it?
Yeah.
Like, what's the go with the BMF right now?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that title is always going to take a backseat to real titles.
I think, you know what, Dana? Why don't you just put the BMF on the line at the big pay-per-views, like if you're putting on a Sphere or if you're putting on a UFC 300, 400? Because at the end of the day, no one really cares about the title. It doesn't carry a lot of weight. Only when there's a lot of, hype around it, when it's a fight like Gaethje versus Holloway, when you put two crazy guys together, George Masvidal's, like, I don't think it has any place outside of the big pay-per-view events.
I've always held the position that title shouldn't exist because if you do hold the title, you're not the baddest motherfucker in the UFC.
It means nothing. You're not a title
Whoever
holder.
holds the title in that division is obviously better and badder than you. But going back to who Arman can verse, for me, the only one that makes sense is Charles Oliveira. I know he did beat Charles only back, UFC 300, but that was a very tight fight. And it was only 3 rounds.
Yeah.
To give it to say, okay, you can go 5 rounds. And if you look at Charles Oliveira, he was supposed to fight Islam back in October last year, didn't get to fight him. Then he fought Arman. So realistically, he does deserve a title shot still. So I wouldn't be.
I don't know if the rematch goes the same way. I think it was a very close fight, like you said. But, I mean, Arman's not going to say no to that. A guy that you've already beat, to have an interim title fight and hold on to that before your next Islam fight. I mean, how do you say no to that?
Yeah, I know. But the best thing that came out of this interview for Arman, he said, because my fight is going to be in December and no longer October, I'm no longer putting out the anti-bullying PSA. I don't care about it.
He doesn't have to put out an anti-bullying piece because he punched that fan at UFC 300. So he was going to do it just to fight for the title, to fight against Islam in October. But now it's in December. I bully. I don't care.
It's almost like
I'm not for the anti-bullying message. I just bully. If I see you in the crowd and you shove me, you say something to me, I'm going to punch you. He has no remorse for it. And rightly so. He served his time. He's waited long enough. Let the man have an interim title fight or a fight against
It just
Islam.
showed you, but the planned apology or the planned video,
All bullshit.
it was all bullshit. It was all empty.
Yeah.
So it was like, what was the point of even making him do it?
Well, the point is just, so you don't get a suspension.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. It was like, it's empty in its empty in its actual substance. Like no one actually cared whether he did it. Some loser that was like, just for good PR, let's put out a good video. Like, say you're anti-bullying. Yeah, I'll do it. I don't have to do it anymore. I'm not fighting till December. I'm not doing it. I'll bully whoever I want.
Now, we saw this clip of Merab. I know it was last week, but I want your opinion on it. Is Merab one of the biggest idiots in the UFC? Now, you saw what happened when he showed his cut on his eye, but now he's gone up to a fan and pretty much assaulted a fan in the stands?
Well, this was on the back of, I think, was it what was that, Fanatics event?
Yeah.
Some Fanatics event on in Las
Ruben's
Vegas.
event.
And some fans said something to him and he's trying to jump the fence and you could see him dangling off the fence. He wouldn't jump it properly. Then he got in his face. If you're a fighter getting in a fan's face, it's very, very stupid. What are you going to do? You're going to hit him? There's your career over.
It's not your career. I mean, you're getting a hefty fine. You're getting a slap on the wrist by the UFC, but you're in a position where you're fighting for a title against Sugar Sean at a marquee event like the Sphere. Why are you continually putting it in jeopardy for? Like, you're just making things harder for you. You saw the last fighter that pissed off the UFC, Muhammad Mokaev. He's gone backwards. He's gone back to something FC where he came from, Brave FC. So it's like, you know, you don't want to end up there, Merab. I know you're very entertaining. I love your social antics, but you got to tread a fine line when it comes to Dana and Hunter. Don't piss them off too much and capitalize on your opportunities when you can.
So then I think my phone must have been listening to me because I've been calling Merab an idiot. And then an old clip resurfaces on Instagram of Merab trying to dive headfirst into ice water. He dives headfirst into this thing, bang, splits his head open.
Yeah.
He's on his phone, he's looking at it, he's like, yeah, I think that was a good idea. He's got blood pouring down the side of his face. Look, I know fighters aren't the sharpest tools in the shed.
But it's not looking like he's got the highest IQ.
But, I mean, like, just maybe go touch the water. I think that's like, no, maybe like feel the surface, especially ice water. Maybe go check how hard it is before you go and jump in. So Merab, I think like,
He's just that level of crazy.
I'm genuinely worried though now. He's not going to make the fight at the Sphere. He's that dumb. He might do something stupid and not make the fight. You already see the cut pre-fight. He's releasing it. Something's going to happen to him because he doesn't take care of himself.
Sugar Sean, Tim Welch's coach, hold Merab in high regard. Anyone that can, you know, push Peter Yan to his limits, I think they respect. It's going to be a crazy fight. It's just right. It's just if he can get there or not. Hopefully, I know there's definitely a backup waiting in Umar, but I just want to see him get there. Finally put on the entertaining fight. You've done all the work, just get there.
Exactly. And Merab, I feel like, does have an advantage that maybe Peter Yan had against Sugar Sean. He can find the way to, even though he's small, use his, stature to his advantage. And the wrestling against Sugar Sean, I think he can win.
Well, let's go to our top 5. Each week we do a top 5 for the UFC. This week's top 5 is top 5 UFC nicknames right now, Nick. What, all time?
All time.
Okay, let's go. Top 5 UFC nicknames of all time, starting with number 5.
Quinton Rampage Jackson. Now, this guy actually replaced his name, Quinton, with Rampage. I think people only refer to him now as Rampage.
His podcast is great. It's called Rampage.
Exactly. So I think he's built his whole career off this nickname, one of the greatest nicknames of all time. And I'm pretty sure he got all his movie roles based upon this nickname.
I mean, I loved him in the A-Team. I don't think he would have got the role in the A-Team if it wasn't Rampage Jackson.
And anytime anyone sees him or refers to him, it's, hey, Rampage or Rampage Jackson. That's Rampage Jackson.
Next one for me is the Soldier of God, Yoel Romero. Now, this is the most fitting nickname in the UFC. You've seen this guy's post-match speeches. He's mentioning Jesus. He's mentioning, America, come back to God. He is genuinely a soldier of Christ. Probably the biggest chin in the UFC, arguably. I would say. So, again, most fitting because he definitely had God on his side because no one could really knock him out.
And considering his natural physique,
unbelievable.
That's God-given gifts.
Yeah,
you look like a soldier of God. If it was a soldier of God prototype, it'd be Yoel Romero.
I don't know if it was steroids, but it was definitely some form of miracle.
At number 3, we're going with the Korean Zombie, one of the greatest nicknames of all time. Hard to not put it at number 1. I think for me, why it's not number 1 is he kind of didn't live up to the nickname. I think people were such big fans of the Korean Zombie because of the nickname, but after I saw Volk wipe the floor with him, it just pegged it down the list a couple spots.
Korean Zombie had fans because of his nickname, Korean Zombie. That's, you were known for him. Plus, he had the song to go with it. People were tearing up when he had that retirement match and singing Zombie in the crowd. Very touching moment. I still get goosebumps.
And when you compare it to his real name, Chang Sung Jung.
Yeah.
Korean Zombie sounds a lot better.
Very marketable.
If I'm reading a fight card and I hear someone named Korean Zombies fighting, I want to watch that fight.
Number 2, the notorious Conor McGregor. Now, this probably should be number 1 because he's the biggest star in the UFC. But again, the way I think Dana says it, the way Bruce Buffer says it, the way he walks the walk and then talks the talk, then walks the walk, he is the notorious Conor McGregor. It's a very fitting nickname.
Everyone's seen the clip of Dana. I don't have a favorite fighter. the notorious
Yeah.
Conor McGregor. He loves him and he loves saying his nickname. I think it's fitting as well. I think because
Yeah.
it's the most fitting nickname for someone. It's not like, and it's, I think because it started so early in his career and he's lived up to the hype, he's lived up to the nickname, makes it all the better.
I mean, you're 100% right. Before Dana was glazing Johnny Bones Jones, he was glazing the notorious Conor McGregor.
And number one, the axe murderer, Wanderlei Silva. This sounds like a movie villain's name. It sounds like a serial killer's name. And that's why it's the best nickname of all time in the UFC.
He looks like a serial killer.
He does
It's
look
very
like
fitting.
a serial killer. He looks like a movie villain. For someone to call you this, you must have a screw loose and you must be somewhat of a psycho in the octagon. And that's what Wanderlei Silva was.
I mean, you've got nicknames like our Aussie, the Reaper, Bobby Knuckles, but this just fits Wanderlei Silva. And I think throughout his career, he kind of showed very famous fighter in Pride. Probably didn't have too much of a prominent career in the UFC, but the axe murderer does fit.
Well, you saw him against Chael Sonnen on, I think, The Ultimate Fighter. He's one of the funniest guys. It's like, not intentionally, but he's one of the funniest guys to look at and see.
I can't think you get close to me. Yeah. Okay, well, that is our UFC top 5 nicknames. Make sure you subscribe to @Kairouz Bros on YouTube and checking out our clips @Jon-Bernard K on Instagram and TikTok. Nick, let's get into the boxing. No Limit, Nikita Tszyu versus Koen Mazudia. It's tomorrow night. It's not an unbelievably stacked card, but I mean, there's a Tszyu brother fighting on it. We asked all the fighters, are the Tszyu brothers the face of boxing in Australia?
Definitely. Who else you got?
Well, again, at one point in time, we had Paul Gallen. Right now, it's the Tszyu brothers.
No, we had Cambosis. Cambosis sold out.
No,
Melbourne
but
a
again, he
couple
wasn't the
times.
face of Australian boxing. But I think everyone unanimously said, yes, they've had the Tszyu name. They had the great Costa Tszyu, but they've beat every opponent that they've had in front of them. Okay, Tim just recently lost with the cut on his head against Sebastian Fundora. But look, at the end of the day, they are the money makers for No Limit Boxing. They're the money makers of the pay-per-view sellers in Australia. But you do have quality fighters like George Kambosos, like the Maloney brothers. So I wouldn't discount them out. I think Nikita still has a long way to go before being the face of Australian boxing.
Tim Tszyu's definitely the face of Australian boxing. You see it the way they promote him on ads for Fox Sports. He's crossed over to other sports, training and all that. There's no other boxer that's got a bigger name than him at the moment. And it shows why he's doing the fights overseas now. He's got another fight coming up, I think, later this year. And Nikita Tszyu, he's not far behind. He's obviously following in what Tim's footsteps were. Have some local Australian fights, win the Australian titles, then move overseas.
Yeah, he's going to the regional titles now.
So Nikita Tszyu will probably win tomorrow night pretty convincingly. Whether that sets up a fight with Michael Zarafa, who knows? And then he probably makes the jump overseas as well, or he looks for those big money fights.
It sounds like that's on the cards. Zarafa's pretty much called out Nikita Tszyu and Tim Tszyu, saying, once I get past Nikita, I'm going for Tim Tszyu. Is this a step backwards for Zarafa, though? To fight for a title overseas in Las Vegas against Lara, to then go into Nikita Tszyu, I think it is a step backwards, but it's a backwards step to go forwards because he wants that money Tim Tszyu fight. And everyone, is saying it's embarrassing for Zarafa to take Nikita, but at the end of the day, we need a bad guy in Australian boxing, a guy to go up against the faces. He says, I want to be the Anthony Mundine. I think him against Nikita is not a one-sided fight, but one where he can use a lot of his experience. Nikita's still very young, and then go on to make that money fight against Tim, but it's whether or not Tim wants it.
I understand the criticism of if you're rumored to fight Tim and then you're settling for Nikita. Not that it's a knock against Nikita, it's just Tim is the bigger star, it's the bigger money fight, and it'd be higher stakes. So I do feel for Michael Zarafa, but like you said, it is a strategic move to get yourself back in that conversation. You beat Nikita Tszyu, and all of a sudden, okay, you're setting yourself back up towards Tim's level. So I would put myself to say, Michael Zarafa, I think you're going to win tomorrow night, pretty convincingly. Who is he versing?
Tommy the Titan Brown.
Yeah, look, that guy should be in a wheelchair. I agree with you, Michael. So I'm going with Michael there with a pretty convincing win.
Let's go through it. Okay, so we're not going to preview the whole card. There's some entertaining fighters on there. Jasmine Parr's going to be an entertaining fight. Polkinghorn's on the card again. I think he wins pretty comfortably. But let's go from Tommy Brown versus Michael Zarafa. Again, you're talking about a 40-plus-year-old fighter coming out of retirement to face Michael Zarafa. I think this is an easy win for Zarafa. Again, but last time Zarafa fought a 40-year-old, he ended up on the canvas. So I don't want to speak too soon, but Zarafa seemed fairly confident at the press conference. He's confident in his abilities. Yes, Tommy Brown's fought former champions, but Zarafa's just at a different point in his career. Still, I would say in the prime of his career, he's 33 years old. So I think Zarafa gets past him there, comes straight for him, vertical fight, and I think gets a finish. Now, if you're looking at Nikita Tszyu versus Koen Mazudia, Nikita's been saying this is going to be his toughest fight. The Rose brothers are saying this is going to be his toughest fight. Former training partners. There hasn't been much animosity. These guys get along pretty good. They both got that weird, strange kind of vibe about them.
They're both awkward.
They're very awkward fighters. But look, I think Cohen can chat a little bit. Again, he stands on being a warrior in the ring. I think it's going to go the distance. Nikita couldn't get a stop against the no-name Italian he fought last time. How's he going to get a stop against Cohen Mazudia, who I know he's coming off a loss against Billy Hussein. So I think it can go either way. I'm not going to say it's an easy Nikita win and it's a layup for Nikita. But these guys are going to go at each other. I think Nikita does end up getting the win.
I'll say it's going to be an easy Nikita win.
Okay.
I think the skinhead Nikita, who's talking about wanting and eating blood, I think that's a psycho that actually just is going to look. And I feel like no limit fights, they're kind of set up for the Zoo brothers to perform well. It rarely does, Nikita ever have a really tough fight. I know he got tested, like you said, last time.
I mean, like in his last 6 fights, he's been knocked down 4 times. So he has been tested. He does have that chin. I think that's something you got to watch out going up against someone like that.
But I feel like the more he fights, the more experience he's gaining. I think he's said multiple times, look, he did have a time off from his junior boxing career to start again back at professional boxing. So each fight, he's gaining more experience. And I think going into more of these fights, he's got more to prove. The stakes are higher. He's now the main event of the card. So I think, I think what happened against Brewbreaker, he probably copped a couple shots unintentionally that probably set him back. But ultimately, his power and skill would, would get him the win.
Okay, let's go with Nikita there. So I got Nikita, Michael Zarafa, Billy Polkinghorn, Jasmine Parr to get the win. Again, that's probably all the favorites. Okay, and that's the no limit. I don't think you see many upsets on these no limit cards. Maybe 1 or 2 here and there. But again, make sure you stay tuned tomorrow. You can catch that live on pay-per-view, or if you find the stream on Kick. No, I'm only joking. Don't do that. Nah. But I also want to touch on something else that happened in boxing this week, just quickly, Nick. Floyd Mayweather replacing the ref mid-exhibition fight against Gotti?
There's something wrong with Floyd Mayweather now. He's somehow still boxing. I don't know. I never see the promotion for any of these fights. I just see the tweets that he's fighting someone, whether it be in Japan, Korea, I don't know where the hell he's fighting. I think he fought in Mexico or somewhere in South America against Gotti for the 3rd time.
Well, it looked like Gotti was just paid to take punches. I don't know if he threw any.
And now you see that he replaced the ref mid-fight. He wasn't impressed with the referee's performance. Listen, get out. I don't want you reffing anymore.
I mean, I don't think that's ever been done before, but it is an exhibition. It's not a sanctioned bout.
But I'm saying
Floyd can do whatever he wants.
Call into question, the influence over refereeing or whether an event's rigged. Yeah, hey, I don't like what you're doing. Get out. I'm going to get a better referee.
At the end of the day, like Floyd's 50-0. They're not professional bouts. These are just entertaining to watch. Hey, I saw the great Floyd Mayweather against Gotti, even though they were well past their prime. No one cares about these fights. That's why you don't really hear about it.
Would you go?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in the area, you're telling me if Floyd Mayweather comes to the ICC Centre tomorrow night and goes, I'm going to jump on.
Depends on the cost.
I'll be there with bells on. I'll be there with bells on.
If it's like, I'd say less than $500, I'm going. Over $500, I'm not going.
Okay, well, let's get into our MMA hot take hotline where we get a caller to call in. Make sure you use the 1-800 hotline below to see if you can call in and give your MMA hot take. Maybe we get played on the show and you can get our thoughts on it. But this week's hot take comes from a caller. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, get it there. I got a hot take. My hot take is that the Max Holloway knockout at 300 is the most overrated knockout of all time. Okay?
Overrated.
Look, it was cool. It was flashy. First time we've really seen Justin Gaethje get knocked out like that. Impressive. But is it the greatest knockout of all time? Fuck no. Okay?
Jeez.
It feels like everyone pretends like this fight was somehow like decided in that last 10 seconds, and it was really just Max Holloway flipping a coin just to see if, maybe Justin could get a head jump on him, and, but Max Holloway found a way to beat him there. No. Justin Gaethje looked like he was about to die. He had his nose broken, I think. I think he couldn't even see at that point. I think he either had an eye poke or something like through the fight. He was dead. Max Holloway was like, hey, I just want to kill you. Please stand in front of me so I can kill you. Justin Gaethje wasn't going to win. He wasn't going to knock Max Holloway out. He was just going to get knocked out. And everyone treating this knockout like it's something better than Kamaru Usman getting fucking obliterated by Leon Edwards' leg is ridiculous. That was an insane upset knockout. That was incredible. That shocked everyone in the way.
Might be a bit of
no
bias.
one was shocked at the end of the fight that Max Holloway won. So, yeah, that's my hot take. I know you guys disagree, so fuck you both. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, hey, hang on.
Listen,
I'm not going to disagree.
No, listen, the awkward part is we did put out a top 5 knockouts of all time, and we did have Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje at 1, but we had Leon Edwards number 2.
Look, there's a bit of recency bias, don't get me wrong, because it was UFC 300, but I think that call is just getting a bit heated for absolutely no reason. Yes, Justin Gaethje was losing the fight significantly.
Yeah, he was finished.
Okay, but it did call for the BMF. It did call for the fight of the night.
No, but I think that's what made the knockout so much better, was because he didn't have to do it. He could have just chilled in the corner,
100%.
could have wrestled him if he wanted to.
Look, does it match up to Leon Edwards getting a miracle head kick to Kamaru Usman? Probably not. That'll go down in history as one of the best Rocky knockouts. It is. It's probably 1 and 2. But there's been some other unbelievable knockouts. We're not talking just all time. I think when we did that list, it was this year.
No, it was all time.
Knockout. Well, we did a mid-season awards, and we said it was the best knockout of the year. Probably go down as the best knockout of all time. But it was just because of the occasion. UFC 300, BMF title. You know what I mean? It was hyped as supposed to be one of the biggest cards of the year.
I just want to know where he thinks the overrated comes in. Because if you're saying it's not 1, is it 2? And if it's 2, it's still rated.
And it's also got to be the fashion in which he was knocked out. You know, Justin Gaethje fell down like a domino. His head went straight into the mat. Watching it from different angles, it looks worse all the time. So again, I think it's how impactful the knockout was as well. And I mean, Justin Gaethje hasn't been the same since.
Yeah, I don't think this guy realizes who Justin Gaethje is, though. Justin Gaethje, if you give him the opportunity, can kill you. He's known as one of the greatest strikers in the UFC. If you're Max Holloway and you're giving this psycho Justin Gaethje an opportunity to throw a punch on you, you could have lost. It very easily could have gone the other way. So don't say, because he was winning the first 5 rounds, you know, it's a bit overrated. He was dying in there. He went in for the kill.
Let's not forget, everyone counted out Max Holloway before this fight as well.
I did.
Everyone was saying there's no way he beats Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje's on his way to a title shot, and Max Holloway pieced him up in every single round and then got the knockout in the 5th. So again, you're talking about another underdog knockout. I think will go down as one of the greatest knockouts of all time, again, because of the occasion, and people will remember it forever.
And what made the knockout even better was Holloway's celebration.
Yeah, he was going nuts.
Like that for me adds to the knockout. So I think there's no way it's overrated. This call is just a hater. I don't know what Max Holloway did to him. Maybe he slept with his missus or something. I don't know.
Would it be the best KO of all time if it wasn't at UFC 300? If it wasn't Holloway versus Gaethje?
It'd still be top 5
for the BMF. I think it's still top
5.
5. But look, the call's not wrong. Leon Edwards knocking out Kamaru Usman will go down in history for sure. But my personal preference, I just like Max Holloway. I'm blessed.
Hey, 300, it's more significant.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, let's get into a quick WWE wrap-up. Again, we cover all wrestling as well, all combat sports. This week, I want to ask a question. AEW All In or WrestleMania? Are they the same events? Are they as big as each other?
No, definitely not. One's a 2-night, extravaganza where they're pumping so much money into it. It's got all the history of 40 years, 40+ years.
You got celebrities from Hollywood coming in. You got,
Look, AEW, they've been going on for 5 years now?
Yeah,
I'm not expecting it to be in competition with WrestleMania.
These crowds at Wembley Stadium are massive. Did you see the crowd singing in unison Final Countdown for Daniel Bryan?
It's great. They obviously got a great crowd. Wembley's a massive, massive stadium. But if the WWE went there for WrestleMania, they would get the same, if not more, somehow.
Look, the reason why I think WWE is just that little bit better, the storylines are better, okay? You can kind of follow a storyline. It's not like just matches being thrown together. And then the payoffs are always bigger at WrestleMania. I know it's 2 nights and there's more matches. It's just the celebrities that are coming in, the mainstream attention that it gets. That's why I want to ask now, if WWE does a WrestleMania in the UK, is it as big as All In?
It's 10 times bigger. Just by the nature of the companies, it has to be bigger.
Do you think they want to do a WrestleMania in the UK because of the success that AEW's had in the UK?
I think that's definitely a catalyst for them going there. But you already saw when they were in Money in the Bank last year, John Cena came out, I'm bringing WrestleMania here.
They were teasing it very early on.
I don't know when they're going to actually do it though. Because
now they've had Nick Khan and Triple H have meetings with Sadiq Khan, the UK mayor or the London mayor.
Mayor.
I think it's definitely going to happen in London. I think it's the one after Vegas.
Really?
I think it's 42.
42.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 42.
Look, you know what? WWE is so international now. They got pay-per-views in Australia. They got pay-per-views in Berlin. They got pay-per-views in France. Like they can go wherever they want. They're that big of a media giant now. They can just do whatever they want. And a WrestleMania there off the back of the success of All In,
Yeah.
I think does lead. Do they do it at Wembley? I think that'd be the smart play.
Yeah, you do it at a stadium, for sure.
It's the biggest stadium in the
Well,
UK.
at the end of the day, why I think AEW isn't on the level of WWE right now is definitely storylines, booking, and getting that casual fan in. Again, I don't think there's going to be casual wrestling fans tuning into AEW at Wembley.
I'd like to say I'm a bit more than a casual fan, but for me to keep up with WWE is hard. For me to keep up with AEW is impossible. I can't do it. I saw the results of All In. I try to keep up. I'm a big fan of Christian Cage. I'm happy he won the Casino Gauntlet. But other than that, like Daniel Bryan, look, man, come back to WWE. That's all I say. Every time I hear what he's doing in AEW.
It's kind of the same. You get some surprise returns. Ricochet came out. You know, in WWE, you had Cody Rhodes returned at WrestleMania. You had the ending shot with Daniel Bryan at the end of All In. You had the ending shot of Cody Rhodes at the end of WrestleMania. I think they're trying to emulate each other, but I think AEW's got a long way to go before it becomes WrestleMania.
Look, I think WCW was lightning in a bottle, and it was just the perfect place at the perfect time. And they took, maybe 6 years to start competing with WWF, or maybe 4 or 5 years. Like, in the environment that wrestling is now, AEW's got a good 20 years possibly before they can even consider being on that level. And that's with a lot of things going their way.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. That's all we have time for Trash Talk this week. Make sure you stay tuned to our socials for our picks for the boxing tomorrow and future UFC events at Jon-Bernard K. But make sure you subscribe at Kairouz Bros on YouTube. That's all for today. Back to you in the studio, Ryan.